Liar. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, February 11th, 2026. Time to get this whole thing started all over again. These Wednesdays, they keep coming, which means, by the way, the Tuesdays keep coming. They come before the Wednesdays. Those are very often election days, although at this point, there's no longer any such thing as election day now that we have early voting and mail-in voting, which I very much want to stop, of course, because it's rife with fraud. But these things keep happening, and very frequently on Tuesdays, so we had to search around a little bit, but there were some. We'll update you. Greg Dworkin stands by a day full of news that will require considerable interpretation. By the way, I guess North America, or the Americas, as Bad Bunny would put it, under the cloud of a mass shooting today because our neighbors to the north have experienced. It's not that they haven't experienced it before. Generally speaking, we have the reputation for these sorts of things, but it does happen from time to time, once in a great while, in Canada, and in a very small town in a rather remote area of British Columbia. I don't know if I would appreciate being described that way necessarily, but it's the least of their problems at the moment. That's the way I'm reading it in the news. Certainly, well, about as far away from my own locality as you can get. We're just going to have to rely on the news reports. But small town of about 2,500 people, known as, is it Tumbler Ridge? I think Tumbler Ridge, British Columbia, 2,500 people and 25 people shot there. And I mean, that's so 1% of the town involved in this, on the wrong end of this shooting. There's no right end, of course. It largely concentrated around a school, so I guess it becomes a school shooting as well. And in the usual pattern, the person suspected of being the actual shooter has killed themselves as well. So, I mean, it checks all the boxes. So all we can do is wait and watch. It's we're usually in this situation. We don't know exactly what the hell happened there, and we really have to wait to find out. And there's no use theorizing about it. And I'm about as removed from the situation as could possibly be, and still be here in the Americas. So we'll leave it to the local folks to let us know what's going on and when they feel comfortable telling us that they know what's going on. Just wanted to note it, at least in part at the beginning, because it seems like such a massive blow to this tiny town. But there's much more going on, of course, because we live in an age of chaos, and a lot of things that we have to catch up on here at home, but we'll keep an eye on that one. And many of the things that we are dealing with here, less deadly, yes, but no less inexplicable. Very difficult things to wade our way through. And I don't know, all sorts of crazy hijinks happening today. And we'll bring Greg in with a little piano flourish today. He's always there in the background, quietly waiting for his turn to pipe up. Good morning, Greg. How are you?
Good morning.
Good morning.
Luckily, I'm not a music critic.
Yeah, right. Well, that's true. There's no, we all love the Imperial fanfare, of course. And,
yeah, well, that's good too.
Yeah.
Just some of them. Not
I
so
just
much.
play them while you're talking the whole time. Everything I've got. Hey, this is
Well,
getting
just
annoying.
talk while you're talking. What's the difference?
Oh, right.
It's the same thing.
Yeah. All right.
So I got about 5 or 6 things to talk about.
Yeah, you gave me
today.
a list, which
did.
was unusual. Okay.
Should I do that? Is it?
Yeah, it's
helpful?
fine. Yeah, I think so.
Epstein
We just don't
class,
bother organizing
Epstein
this
class stories.
that
because
guy's got
there's an
class.
Epstein class, and they all
Epstein.
suck. So we're going to do that.
Okay.
Then we have to absolutely,
stick to the
positively pick your brain about the House rule on
Ouch, my
tariff,
brain.
which failed.
Yeah. Fail.
And New York Times says a lot of the reason it failed is because Mike Johnson didn't want this vote to happen, and
So it
his
did.
trick for having it not happen is to change the rules of time and space.
Yeah, one of your favorites.
And make 36 days into a single day for the purposes of this deemed discussion, that sort of thing. We have to talk about election integrity in the Fulton County
Why, did they
seizure
have
of
some?
files, which is all based on bogus garbage stuff.
Sure.
And it's sort of falling apart already. Then we have airspace closure over
Do we, though?
parts of New Mexico and New Orleans, and like, are we invading Mexico because Trump doesn't want the Epstein files released?
Sure. Why not?
Pam Bondi can't indict a ham sandwich. Tried to indict a bunch of people
Ham sandwiches.
who spoke out against illegal military orders.
Yes. Everyone follow the law. That's it. You're under
Mark
arrest.
Kelly and Elise Slotnick and all that, and failed. She couldn't get an indictment. And then Pam Bondi's going on the Hill to insult some Democrats.
Fun.
I say that because whenever they ask
Yes.
her a relevant question, like, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah.
She starts insulting them.
Oh, yeah. Well, you voted for illegal alien thing.
Yeah. Oh, your daughter's sister's grandmother delivered coal to Ringo or something.
It's a thing. She does it, and Scott Bessent does it. They all, I think, are handed talking points. If they ask you a question that you don't want to answer, here are attack lines that you can use against individual questioners.
Right.
And I don't know why that's acceptable. It's not.
But I'm going to start
All right.
with some odd things just to get them out of the way. First of all,
well,
Trump's favorite pollster, Rasmussen, along with YouGov, along with the worst pollster in America, Harvard Harris, asked a question. Who has done a better job as president,
okay.
Biden?
Grover Cleveland
or Trump?
I see. Between those two.
Between those two,
All right. Biden.
Harvard Harris, worst pollster in America, Biden 51, Trump 49.
Okay.
YouGov, Biden 48, Trump 44.
Okay.
Rasmussen, Biden 48, Trump 40.
Mm-hmm.
So buyer's
Really?
remorse in clear language for the public to understand. This gives you a hint of the losing streak that Trump is on right now. What difference do the polls make? Well, they make a difference in elections, for example. And there was an election. There was an election. I think you said there was a local one in Virginia.
Yeah.
There were other places. The usual people got elected at the usual places. But one of the more interesting ones
All right.
was in House District 35 in Oklahoma.
Oh, Oklahoma.
Where the wind comes
Yeah, it takes a long time to say Oklahoma. Phew. All right.
racing down the plain. You know that one?
Right.
Waving wheat. And so the Republican
Smells
won.
sweet. Or used to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Smells like Axe now.
64.2 to the Democrats, 30-something.
Hey.
But that's what wasn't the interesting part.
Oh.
Within that House district,
Yes.
at precinct level, there was a precinct. Democrats have flipped precinct 520305 in Oklahoma State House District 35 special election. Trump won this precinct by 60 points. The Democrat won by 15. That's a 75-point swing to the Democrat in one precinct. So that's worth mentioning.
All right. I mean, it's one precinct out of, I guess, I don't know how many in this district, but
Out of a bunch,
20,
that's a
whatever.
big
But
swing.
what a weird thing. What happened? What is going on in that district? Did
I
they
don't know.
accidentally deported all the Republicans? Maybe.
It's
I don't
entirely possible. You know, the previous owner of this House district was a Republican who had to step down because of domestic violence.
know. Oh, you can't do both?
Well, maybe
In
this
Oklahoma?
was the lady's family, this district. I don't know.
That could be, right? Oh, sometimes, the whole town is one family, right? So, why not? That's as plausible an explanation as any.
I don't know. Got to check into it. But I just
I'd like to know. Yeah.
I'd like to know, too, but nobody's talking about it.
Well, tell
All
us
they're
that,
talking about, in fact,
Daniel.
is House District 35 is centered on Pawnee County, but it also includes parts of Osage, Creek, Payne, and Noble. Cleveland, Hominy, Prue, Oilton.
Really? Okay.
Oilton in Oklahoma. I wonder
Oilton.
if that's an oil town.
Yeah.
Lawrence Creek, Dumright,
Excuse me?
Glencoe, Morrison, Red Rock. You got to have a town named Red Rock. I mean, it's just,
I guess so.
you have to.
Right. Dumb town. What was it?
Blazing Saddles.
All right. There was something you played in the middle there that was odd. Okay. Well, yeah, sure. I'd be curious
also
to
a
know.
square mile around Lakeside Golf Course.
Oh. What? That's interesting. I mean, how does it? All right. A square mile around it, but not in
the
it.
golf course itself, because nobody lives on the golf course.
Wow. Gophers.
Yeah, I suppose.
Maybe that's it.
Anyway,
they used to be
so
very
that
heavily
happened.
for
That
Trump,
was
but they
interesting.
killed all the gophers.
Ha.
Okay.
So, Here's the summary from Politico Playbook. The old 1-2. Two major defeats suffered by Trump last night will set up two must-watch moments of political theater today and serve as further evidence of the rocky road ahead for the White House. Now, step back, big picture.
Yeah.
Whether it's the Bad Bunny, alternative halftime debacle.
Right, sure.
Whether it's polling, whether it's, Texas State House defeats, everybody understands that Trump's on the downslide. And to the point where media is now actually starting to talk about it.
Okay.
They also know he's sort of demented. He can't keep a train of thought. His speeches are ridiculous.
They're banning hockey.
Yeah, dumb.
Sure.
But now people, when I say people, media are now talking about it.
All right, I guess that's good.
Different. So
I'm into that.
You could feel the tides turn. Two major defeats suffered by Trump will set up two must-watch moments more than 10 months after Trump dramatically seized, quote, emergency and, quote, tariff powers, and that ought to be in scare quotes and is.
Yeah.
And upended decades of American free market orthodoxy, the House finally pushed back. 3 Republicans voted with Democrats to reject Speaker Mike Johnson's attempt to reinstate a House ban on tariff votes. It was more than enough to overturn the wafer-thin GOP majority, which is like
wafer-thin. Yeah, it's as thin as can be.
Now, watch the defeats roll in. The 217-214 defeat. And remember, a tie is a defeat for whoever's trying to pass something.
Right.
Because there's no vice president to break a tie. Should open the door to a rolling series of Democratic-led votes targeting Trump's tariffs, starting with Gregory Meeks today, as early as today. Given the current mood in the House, every single Democrat showed up to vote last night. Plenty of Republicans are uncomfortable with tariffs. Yeah. And Johnson's going to lose some of these votes. And don't forget, the Senate's already voted against Trump's tariffs.
I did forget.
Congress is actively rebuking the president over his signature economic policy. Now, it won't pass because Trump will veto it.
It'll pass, just won't become.
Well, it'll pass, but it won't become law.
Yeah. Won't become that thing.
So what do you call it after a bill is sent to both houses and both houses pass it, but it's not law yet because the president hasn't signed it? Still a bill?
It is an enrolled bill. Or something. I always forget whether there's two terms and two steps: engrossed and enrolled. But I think maybe enrolled is the second.
Yeah, well,
it's got its own name.
Feeble bill because it won't pass.
Yeah,
but what'll happen?
You shall not. He might forget to not. He might forget to veto it.
Go away. Come back Thursday.
Yeah, I mean anything could happen. I assume he'll want to veto it, but it's a joint resolution declaring an end to the supposed emergency, which is the basis of, was said to be the basis of this tariff, which will bring the tariff to an end.
To be clear what happened.
Oh, why'd do that?
Yeah, well, I'd like to be clear.
All right.
Nothing has passed. What happened is that Mike Johnson snuck in on an unrelated item, a thing, into the rule that said that, for the purposes of blocking anybody from voting on Trump's tariffs,
yes,
37 and a half days and 42 hours will be considered one day for the purpose. I don't know what the language was, but he did some tricks in order to prevent any votes in the House.
Yes, many times.
About Trump's tariffs because they would be against Trump's tariffs. So it was in the rule. He sent the rule to the floor, and the rule lost.
Dropped it.
And the rule lost because Republicans voted against their own party's rules. Again, you've probably get sick and tired of my saying this, and I only say it because David taught me, but voting against your own party's rule almost never happens except in this Congress.
Yes, it's very rare, and because
usually you pull it
a party
if you see
line
what's happening.
Yeah, that's true. It's a party line thing, and so there's a lot of discipline behind it, and you're aware you're in trouble if you vote against it, and if they see people are defying them anyway, right? They say, well, hold on, pull the vote, don't have it, rather than log the defeat.
Right.
because it comes along with loss of control of the floor of the House.
Exactly. And so Jake Sherman wrote, he's from Punchbowl, not Politico these days. And said, look, what happened is leadership didn't want this vote. They knew they were going to lose. Trump forced it on them.
Okay.
Trump made them.
Duh.
And Johnson knew he was going to lose. And so by doing so, he's lost control of the House. And in effect, this is the end of the House Republican majority. Because now what happens is that because that rule was defeated, you are allowed to vote on the tariff. So now we have to talk about something called a privileged vote. I don't know if it's a privileged resolution. I don't know how they're going to do this. It would be,
yes. I think it comes in the form of a joint resolution, so it would be a privileged resolution.
So that means that anybody can offer a privileged resolution, and the House, therefore, has to vote on it. Because they have to vote within 15 days, and that's why Mike Johnson was trying to play time and space with the calendar. Yes,
and apparently I don't think I tracked it all this way, but Don Bacon had been complaining about this rule and saying this is the fourth time they've suspended the calendar, essentially.
So Thomas Massey, Thomas Bacon,
got tired of it.
Some guy from California, Kylie, are the three people who were Republicans who voted against the rule and made it go down. But in any case, once a privileged vote occurs in the House, should it pass, because it's privileged, it goes to the Senate must vote on it. Thune doesn't have the
Oops, you've hit a button. Thune doesn't have the opportunity to block it? Importunity to block it? All right, well, maybe it's something more than... Maybe this is... they've expanded the El Paso ground stop to include Greg's microphone. So that's too bad. Maybe, Greg, you might have to... If you're not hearing me, because you're talking over me, and your microphone isn't the problem, you might have to, I don't know, hang up and call again, unplug everything and plug back in again. That's odd. So, I don't know. Maybe a squirrel has chewed through the internet wires. Okay. Shall I carry the ball forward? I know this was a topic that you really wanted to discuss, too, because you love this trick of stopping time and space. But, okay, well, I don't know what to tell you. I'm going to have to clearly you've recognized by now that I'm not responding to the things you're saying, or you don't hear yourself. Let's see. I'll message him and see if we can't get this back online. But, yes, this is a great illustration. Thankfully, we set things up nicely yesterday while Greg wasn't here to ask the question. Unfortunately, but I knew he would be very interested in this process. And I mean, ultimately, this is the limitation on that power, that ultimate power to simply change the calendar. We keep reminding people every once in a while that it happens, but we can't get, I don't know, I guess we've never had an illustration of, well, what happens when people are just like, you're now like 4, 5, 6 times just saying days aren't passing here. On a topic like this controversial topic like the tariffs, which are supposedly anathema to conservative economic thinking. At this point, though, they became anathema to conservative economic thinking by destroying a conservative economic program once in full view of everyone. Though now there's a huge project among MAGA Republicans to revise the history, to rewrite that history and say, no, actually, it was awesome. They were great. And the Depression was because of FDR as opposed to the opposite, which we've understood for so long. Anyway, yeah, eventually it's self-limiting in the sense that there are, if you have a narrow majority, eventually somebody's going to become embarrassed or frustrated by this idea of manipulating time and space over and over and over again in front of everybody. So I don't know. We'll see what else comes down the pike. But I guess this breaks the dam open and loosens up the calendar to work like normal calendars, meaning everybody can get their privileged resolutions to ripen. And as Greg says, right, Thune apparently has no opportunity to block this because the privilege is such that the Senate is compelled to take this up, which is not always the case. So that's nice, and it's a simple one-line thing, I think, the Meeks resolution, which simply declares the state of emergency declared by the president on such and such a date to be ended, terminated. And that's the end of it. And no better time for it. Of course, the Supreme Court, in the moment, still, I think, lingering over its decision what to do in the question of whether or not the tariffs were legally imposed in the first place, legally and constitutionally imposed under this alleged state of emergency, which was always understood to be, by most people, I think, to be a pretext for his preferred policy outcome. No one knows what the emergency was supposed to be, but we give deference to the president of the United States because usually he's kind of compelled to be somewhere in the ballpark of the truth when he says things like this. National emergencies really have to have something behind them, and this one really doesn't. And not only is the Supreme Court considering this, but they couldn't have a better a view of the evidence before them than what was displayed just the other day. Trump giving an interview on one of the Fox News channels here. Aaron Rupar captured it, speaking with the Fox Business folks. And I don't know who this interviewer is, and it really doesn't matter. But among other things, they're talking about tariffs. And Trump is quoted here by Aaron Rupar. And sometimes it doesn't capture the entirety of what's in the video, but the text that he decides to run with here is Trump telling his interviewer, so I put on a 30% tariff, which is very low. It is, in fact, very high. I got an emergency call, I believe, from the Prime Minister of Switzerland. She was very aggressive. I didn't really like the way she talked to us, so instead of giving her a reduction, I raised it to 39%. Now, mind you, all of this is supposed to be predicated on this being some sort of declared national emergency. And, you know, you'd like the president to have some grasp of what this emergency is. And, well, there's a couple things wrong with this. And I was first alerted to it by Skip Bitter, who goes also by Dr. the Frog online. And I follow along on Blue Sky, and we get commentary every once in a while on what we feature on the show and back and forth. And anyway, what he has to say here is, you know what? I mean, you should fact check everything. I didn't realize Switzerland had a female prime minister, and it's not like it's terribly unusual or impossible, but, you know, you take note of such things from time to time. So he says, I looked her up. Well, not only do they not have a female prime minister, they don't have a prime minister at all in Switzerland. So, you know, that seems like a little bit of an error. Furthermore, as he says here, this is all Wikipedia lore that I just learned, but I'm not the freaking president. Somebody should probably tell the president. There are women on the federal council, which is an entity, a governing entity of some importance in Switzerland. So, sure, there's women on the federal council, as you might expect, and there have been presidents of the Confederation before who are women, but it isn't one right now. So it wasn't just a mistake like, well, I forgot the term. It's not prime minister, it's president of the Confederation. Although how you, as president of the United States, forget the title president of the Confederation in Switzerland, I do not know. But good question here. I wonder what happened. Did some other country call and he just mixed up the countries? Some other official from Switzerland? Was it a prank call? I mean, it really could have been any one of those things at this point. Imagine, he goes on to say, being able to call the White House and claim to be the Grand Poobah of Czechia and tell Trump he looks like a pumpkin, and now there's a 39% tariff on Czechia. And Trump had it confused with Chechnya anyway. You probably could get a direct phone number with some social engineering at Mar-a-Lago. Largely true. We've already read the story before of a number of reporters, prank callers, others who have just been handed Trump's personal cell phone number and called in the middle of the night or whatever, and he answers directly. So we already know that that's a weakness. But imagine you call up and you're like, "Oh yeah, well this is the Prime Minister of Switzerland, and F you," and then Switzerland ends up with 39% tariffs, and nobody knows what happened. I mean, that's pretty serious. I guess I'll also add, there was commentary I saw from another of our online Blue Sky favorites, Go Like Hell Machine. I love that name. There are two things about this Switzerland tariff story. One is that there is no Prime Minister of Switzerland. He's talking about the president of the Swiss Confederation. Maybe, because apparently it's not a woman either, which is a different thing entirely from Prime Minister. And two, I'm not sure you could make a more persuasive case to SCOTUS for nuking the tariffs than this one. Like, if it's a national emergency and you're literally admitting on the air during an interview, well, I impose tariffs when I don't like the way people talk to me. And also, I'm not entirely sure who's talking to me and why, and whether I've got even the right country in mind. Now, it may be that whoever, spoke to him really did insult him, and he got the tariffs imposed on the right country because somebody corrected him, and he's just misspeaking now. But I don't know. It doesn't argue in favor of allowing the so-called state of emergency to continue. If you can't even state the nature of your emergency, as they said once. What was that? Star Trek Next Generation? Not Next Generation. I don't remember this one, which one it was. But you remember because you're a Star Trek fan. All right. Word from Greg is there's some weather-related interruption here, so we're going to see if we can't work things out. Or I'm going to read whether or not things will work themselves out. ICE. Back in action again.
Hi everybody, this is Scott Anderson, your summary guy. Were you looking forward to an egalitarian democracy free of bigotry, misogyny, racism, and greed, where people of different appearances, belief, and heritage had a right to live without fear, and everyone could expect a basic level of health, stability, and safety throughout their life? Well, too bad. The plain fact is that we're heading in the wrong direction. And where we once had a voice in such things, increasingly we don't. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. However, if you're looking to join people who understand today's issues and can intelligently address the reality of today from your point of view, you can join us at Kagro in the morning. As you know, there aren't many of us out there, at least compared to them. We need to stick together, and by that I mean send us money. That is contributions to patreon.com, secure, reoccurring contributions. Those contributions keep this show on the air and us together. We've been through a lot together. The temporary loss of the presidency, we hope. The temporary loss of the House, the Senate, the Supreme Court, we hope. Face it, we are pretty much all that we have left. Remember, we couldn't do it without you, and you shouldn't do it without us. We're in this together, so thanks.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. We'll do our best to carry on in Greg's tradition. I don't know whether to save all of his stories for tomorrow. There'll be a million stories by tomorrow again anyway, but we can use this at least as a rough guide. So apparently, icy conditions they froze the internet. It literally froze. I guess ice on the wires, ice on the above ground cabling has made things at least unstable enough that it would become more of a distraction than anything else. And tried to reconnect a couple of times, and it's just not going all that well. So we'll give it a shot for tomorrow. We can play now.
And come back tomorrow.
Right, easy enough to do, and we'll give it a shot. And I don't know, things are warming up around here. We got a warming trend happening, and it looks to last into next week. So finally, a lot of this snow concrete will melt, and will be that much easier to get in and out of the driveway. And hopefully conditions thaw out a little bit in Connecticut too, so that we can do more of the show. So lots of things to touch on today. And there are so many. And I can also take a look right into the abbreviated pundit roundup and pull some of his material from there. I know that he wanted to get around to the ham sandwich situation. Drunk-ass moron Jeanine Pirro, who also calls herself the U.S. Attorney or the U.S. Attorney-holic for D.C., has been, willfully, happily on the mission of trying to indict as many of the people that Donald Trump says he doesn't like as possible. And it's just not working. And there a record number of no bills, or as they say, the failure to get an indictment via a grand jury, when the U.S. attorney goes to a federal grand jury and they just basically say, no, we don't see the crime here. We're just not going to indict. And it's not the only way to get a person indicted or arrested, but it's the standby, the standard approach. And it's one check that the people themselves have on federal government overreach, which I assume means they'll be looking to eliminate it in some way in the near future. But they have a terrible record, not only because they're overreaching, it's really only because they're overreaching. You could try and lay a lot of this at the feet of the total and complete incompetence of the people he's put in charge here. But again, remember, we keep saying it, the funny little line that people say that, the prosecutor can indict a ham sandwich. It's that easy. So you really don't have to be all that competent. And these people are really super incompetent that he's been trying to, Ed Martin, who he tried to make the DC U.S. attorney, Jeanine Pirro, just no. And she's just not up to the task, up to and including her inability to say no to these stupid missions of trying to indict people. I don't think she's doing it against her will. I think she's incapable of recognizing the weakness of the cases, and she's just totally bought into the Trump platform. And that if Trump doesn't like them, she doesn't like them. And if they don't like someone, that's indictable. That's a crime. And it's not. This really is an incompetence problem on top of everything else. But it's also, testament to the grand jury that they're able to see that there's nothing there. Now, it may also be that I can't deny that it might be some sort of effort at nullification and just saying, we're not going to let you indict anybody no matter what you think you've got on them. But that hasn't been the case. They haven't stopped indicting people in D.C. It's just these really, really weak cases that they've said, you told us to weigh the evidence and we did, and it's just not there. So in this case, this was Pirro trying to deliver for Trump, who insisted that the Democratic members of Congress, and that should raise a red flag. He's trying to indict Democratic members of Congress who participated in and produced that video reminding active duty members of the armed forces that they had a duty to resist illegal orders. If they were ordered to do something that would be against the code of military justice or unconstitutional or otherwise illegal, that they have a duty to resist those orders and not to carry them out. That is, in fact, the current state of the law and, has always been the state of the law. And they're simply reminding people that that is true. There's no possible interpretation that leads you to an indictment for doing this. They told people, this is the state of the law. We expect you to follow the law. That's actually upholding the law. But of course, it's in opposition to the Trump agenda, because the Trump agenda sought to break the law and ignore the Constitution and wanted people to be on notice that they were going to be held to account in terms of participating in that illegality. Well, anyway, so there they were trying to indict members of Congress, by the way, whose declarations should have been protected from prosecution to begin with under the speech and debate clause of the Constitution, but that nonetheless, box wine Yahoo Jeanine Pirro said, I'll try to indict them. Went to the grand jury. Grand jury just was not having any of it. Said, get the F out of here. And I want to just stress before, maybe we'll read the articles that I've got about it, but I got to stress for you how insistent Trump was that this was really a crime. And I can call this out, I guess, before even reading the article. I think this kind of sums it up. When Trump posted on Truth Social his various rants about this stuff, he said that this video, that these statements by these members of Congress was seditious behavior, which I guess should, bring you back to mind of when this first came up, when they were charging people January 6th, people with sedition. You're like, wow, it's been a long time since there were like a large number of highly publicized sedition cases. And my memory of sedition as a concept in America brought you back to like American history lessons about the early republic and John Adams' administration wanting to prosecute people under the Alien and Sedition Act. And that now here in the second Trump administration, the concept of who is and isn't an alien, and an enemy alien at that, and who is and isn't engaged in sedition. It's like this is like 200 plus years of American history teaching tradition here. This is a bad idea. It was one of the great failures of the Adams administration to try to enforce the Alien and Sedition Acts. And now here they were back again. Bad news stuff. Once again being brought forth by, in this case, Donald Trump, who had threatened to do it in his first term. Anyway, so one, insisting that this was all seditious behavior, which is just, I think was easily recognizable as tit for tat for having charged January 6thers legitimately with sedition, because they were trying to overthrow the government, as opposed to everyone should follow the law. Wow, that's sedition. Well, wow, that's really not. But then, of course, he couldn't resist going forward with the concept and reminding everybody that sedition is kind of sort of a little bit like almost maybe treason. And treason is punishable by death. And so maybe this is too, even though I didn't go as far as saying it was treason. And sedition, I don't know whether there's a degree of sedition that you can charge and seek the death penalty with. I don't follow the sedition cases all that closely. But generally speaking, I think he was conflating the two, but he insisted in his Truth Social postings. Oh no, truth. So it must be true, right? No, actually it's not. It's the opposite. That this was seditious behavior and that it was punishable by death. I think he capitalized the death in all of that. So I got to tell you, the actual outcome here is the president of the United States of America looks at this behavior and says, death penalty, the ultimate penalty under the legal system. This is the worst of the worst, right? And by the way, where have you heard that phrasing before? We're arresting the worst of the worst in our ICE enforcements. And then it turns out that they are arresting people with no criminal record whatsoever. Worst of the worst. Well, this was the worst of the worst crimes. The death penalty is involved. And the grand jury is saying, man, the thing you're talking about, it's not even indictable. That's not even a criminal offense at even the misdemeanor level. We can't indict anybody. Not just because they're immune under the speech and debate clause, but because they just didn't do anything wrong here. This is not a crime, and there's no box you can stuff it into that can make us think it's a crime. Maybe even a crime we haven't even heard of. You tried everything you could. We just don't see the criminal behavior here. The answer is no. Death penalty, or like the ultimate crime, or absolutely nothing and not even approaching the criminal. Not even enough for us to say, well, let's let a trial jury test out whether or not they think it was criminal. No, it's so stupid we can't even let it proceed to the indictment stage, much less a trial. That's what we're talking about. That's a pretty wide gap. Maybe the widest there could possibly be for our chief law enforcement officer and guardian of the Constitution to be that confused. But he's not confused. He's doing it intentionally, which, that's a violation of your oath of office. If you're going to uphold the Constitution, support and defend the Constitution, and intentionally get it that wrong, in the worst possible way. We were going to try to use the power of the federal government to deprive you of life and liberty, both. One, liberty first, life next, because punishable by death for something that isn't even a crime. That's pretty huge. NBC News was the first report that I saw of it, and because it was illustrating the article with a close-up picture of the unevenly dilated pupils of drunk-ass Jeanine Pirro, it captured my attention. Trump administration fails to indict Democrats involved in, quote, illegal orders video, which only served to confuse the thing if you were only entering into the situation now. Illegal orders video. The Democrats were issuing illegal orders in a video? No, it was a video about don't follow illegal orders. President Donald Trump has accused 6 Democratic lawmakers of, quote, seditious behavior after they urged members of the military and intelligence communities to refuse unlawful orders. I mean, that's it. I don't even know whether we really need to read you the details of the article. I don't think that there's anything any more important. But then you'll get the names of the people who were being accused. We have at least that. We owe Ryan J. Riley, Gary Grumbach, and Michael Kosner of NBC News a little bit more than that for bringing us the news. The Trump administration tried and failed Tuesday to indict Democratic lawmakers over a video urging members of the military and intelligence communities not to comply with unlawful orders. 3 sources familiar with the matter told NBC News, and now everybody knows. 6 Democrats participated in the video, and some had said they would not cooperate with the Justice Department's probe into their involvement, and they ought not to. They're immune. The indictment pursued by the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia, led by Trump appointee Jeanine Pirro, is the latest example of the Justice Department's targeting of the president's perceived political opponents. The government attorneys assigned to the case are political appointees, not career Justice Department prosecutors, according to a source familiar with the investigation. So, of some significance, they couldn't get, maybe they never even asked, but they couldn't get a line prosecutor, as they call them, somebody, a regular member of the U.S. Attorney's Office who are career officials who stay there from one administration to the next. And there are fewer and fewer of them everywhere across the United States because people are resigning in protest or being fired or running away for various reasons. So they got one of the muckety-mucks, the political appointees who owe their job directly to Trump, to bring the case. And guess what happened? They suck at it, and there was no case, and it got thrown out. A Justice Department spokesman and a spokesman for the U.S. Attorney's Office didn't respond to request for comment Tuesday night. The FBI, whatever they're doing, besides, fake raids in Georgia, and there's more on that out there as well. The FBI had sought interviews with the 6 members of Congress who appeared in the video, which was posted to social media in November. They are Representatives Jason Crow of Colorado, Maggie Goodlander of New Hampshire, and Chris DeLuzio and Chrissy Houlihan of Pennsylvania. And on the Senate side, Mark Kelly of Arizona and Alyssa Slotkin of Michigan. The lawmakers, all of whom served in the military or in intelligence roles, said in the video that the Trump administration was pitting members of the military and the intelligence communities against American citizens. They then pointed out that public servants can refuse illegal orders. Now more than ever, the American people need you, the lawmakers say in the video. Don't give up the ship. Under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, members of the military are obliged to obey only lawful orders and must refuse those that are manifestly illegal. Trump himself accused the Democratic lawmakers on his social media platform, Truth Social, of all caps seditious behavior, regular lowercase comma, punishable by uppercase death! Exclamation point. At the time, Legal experts broadly agreed that prosecuting members of Congress for their political speech would raise serious First Amendment concerns. Yeah. In addition to the First Amendment issues, the speech or debate clause of the Constitution gives lawmakers on Capitol Hill immunity from prosecution for acts taken within the legislative sphere, a fundamental check on the constitutional separation of powers. It was not immediately clear what charge or charges prosecutors sought against the lawmakers. It wasn't necessarily death penalty, sedition, if there even is such a thing. A federal judge in a separate case is expected to rule in the coming days on the legality of actions taken by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth against Kelly, in particular, over his participation in the video. Hegseth issued a formal letter of censure last month and is seeking to reduce Kelly's retirement rank as a Navy captain. It wasn't enough for Pete Hegseth to censure me and threaten to demote me. Now it appears they tried to have me charged with a crime, all because of something I said that they didn't like, Kelly said in a statement on Tuesday night. That's not the way things work in America. Donald Trump wants every American to be too scared to speak out against him. The most patriotic thing any of us can do is not back down. Slotkin, one of the lawmakers who said they would not cooperate with the Justice Department probe, said she hopes Tuesday's actions by the grand jury ends this politicized investigation for good. But today wasn't just an embarrassing day for the administration. It was another sad day for our country, Slotkin said on X, where she should not be saying anything, because whether or not Pirro succeeded is not the point, although it is funny. It's that President Trump continues to weaponize our justice system against his perceived enemies. It's the kind of thing you see in a foreign country, not in the United States we know and love. Others responded with similarly defiant tones, also on X, which they shouldn't do. DeLuzio said he will not be intimidated for a single second by the Trump administration or the Justice Department lawyers who tried and failed to indict me. While Goodlander said, no matter the threats, I will keep doing my job and upholding my oath to our Constitution. Houlihan said, this is good news for the Constitution and free speech protections it guarantees. Crow added in his statement that Americans should be furious that Trump and his goons tried to weaponize our justice system again against his political opponents. By the way, excellent example of every Republican accusation being a confession. They weaponized the Department of Justice, so I will, even worse. Under longstanding Justice Department policy, the public integrity section at DOJ would normally have to sign off on every step of an investigation involving a sitting member of Congress, especially in a case with free speech and speech and debate considerations. It's an internal check in the DOJ. You make sure, run every bit of this up the flagpole, make sure it works. But in the Trump administration, no. Because the Trump administration has dismantled the public integrity section, eliminating checks meant to prevent the Justice Department's powers from being abused for political purposes. Oh well. The administration has previously failed to indict other perceived political foes. After a federal judge dismissed an initial indictment of New York Attorney General Letitia James, the Justice Department failed to convince two separate federal grand juries that it had met the probable cause threshold. Once in Norfolk, Virginia on December 4th, and once in Alexandria, Virginia on December 11th. Pretty major failures. Under Pirro, a former Fox News host and a longtime friend of Trump's, the U.S. Attorney's Office has also struggled to secure indictments and convictions, including when a jury acquitted a man who chucked a Subway sandwich. I love chucked. Chucked a Subway sandwich at a federal officer patrolling Washington at Trump's orders. It's very rare for a federal grand jury to say prosecutors failed to meet the probable cause threshold for an indictment. And that's true. By the way, they didn't make mention of it, but the two failures in Letitia James's case in Norfolk and Alexandria come under the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of Virginia, and that is Lindsay Halligan. So, the other incompetent idiot that's been installed in a close-in D.C. office who can't get anybody indicted despite the fact that it's the easiest thing in the world. There's more about it. I think I have a New York Times article about it, but I don't know if there's anything in particular that it adds to the situation. But perhaps I'll scan it during the next commercial break to see if there's anything else that can be teased out of it. It's sometimes the case. That's why, when I have the opportunity to put 2 reports in it, I'll do it. But anyway, we'll see whether there's anything worth pulling out of that one. But you got the basics of the news. We'll move on from there because there's a lot more, of course, that we need to get to. And golly, whether any of it will jump out here. You know what? Let me share this on our way to the top of the hour from the New York Times, as is frequently the case. A lot of these things, a lot of the agenda driven by what ends up in my email box. So that's a great way to influence me. I'm like Trump and Fox News in that sense, right? You put it in front of him and he'll talk about it. Well, put it in front of me and I'll talk about it. It's just that you have to get it written up by an actual news outlet at some point, and then put it in front of me in the inbox. All right, here's the story. Back down to Georgia, where the devil went to look to steal some souls because he was in a bind. He was way behind, right? Looking to make a deal, and decided that for some reason the fastest path to filling hell with souls was fiddling contests. I doubt it. I think there's probably a better way. Quite honestly, showing up at a Trump cabinet meeting would probably do it a lot faster than, it's not that fiddle contests take so long. It fits within the context of 4 or 5 minutes, maybe. Though, as far as we know, the devil is 0 for 1, although we only know about the case of Johnny. So other than that, but really, honestly, a Republican conference meeting would be a good place to go. Cabinet meeting, anything like that. And I think you could make your quota. Anyway, here in Georgia, where I don't know whether the devil's still hanging around down there or not there, you could also go to the State Board of Elections meeting and get more than just Johnny anyway. It would be a great idea. Georgia ballot inquiry originated, as we know. We read a little bit yesterday about this weirdo figure behind this thing. And now, good, because the rest of the day was about expanding on those reports, like the one we saw from ProPublica, and you probably felt well informed as the news of the day developed. Georgia ballot inquiry originated with election denier in Trump White House. A newly unsealed affidavit showed that a criminal investigation into the 2020 election in Fulton County, Georgia, relied heavily on claims about ballots that have been widely debunked. ProPublica basically saw it coming, and while we were reading it, we were hearing that the affidavit was in fact going to be unsealed, and the importance of that, of course, as we were discussing yesterday, they did effectuate the raid, and they did manage to get the authorities on the scene to agree to allow them to seize these boxes, even though on the strength of showing up with a warrant that was in fact signed by a federal magistrate judge. But that's not the end all be all of everything. There still has to be probable cause, and it has to be established under normal circumstances in a way that other members of the federal judiciary will agree was properly done. And just because you get a wacko judge to sign it and then go effectuate the raid doesn't mean that's the end of it. You can, in fact, ask, let me see the underlying evidence that led this magistrate judge to say, I find there to be probable cause. What if there's a mistake? What if it's all garbage? And you found the one federal magistrate judge who would agree, like Jeanine Pirro, like Pam Bondi, like Lindsay Halligan, like Ed Martin. And there are several, I guess, right? You could go down. None of them are federal judges at the moment, thank God. But you can find a person who will say, I don't give a goddamn one way or the other what the law and the evidence says. Donald Trump is my God king, and I'll sign whatever you bring me. Well, that's not the system of justice we have. This is reviewable. You can now unseal this thing and go back to court and say, none of this meets the probable cause threshold. This thing was a mistake. It was a biased mistake for a federal magistrate judge to say this constituted probable cause. And if the next level up, the judges agree, and you can't get any judges above that to reverse them, then you throw out the evidence and say, sorry, you got to return it and it can't be used in court. So if you think you're going to bring an indictment, I don't know what you're going to tell the grand jury you're going to use at trial, but it's not going to be this stuff. One of the big problems, though, a side note, and I think all of these stories, when they seize these boxes of so-called evidence that they may or may not be able to use in any case if they ever bring one, they gave no receipt to the officials there from whom they were seizing all of this stuff, seizing all of this. So it'll be awfully difficult to know whether or not, if they are ordered to return all of this material, whether they really did. So that'll become a problem of ongoing litigation in its own right for years to come. Okay, so what happened here? Let's see. Devlin Barrett, Nick Corasanti, and Richard Fawcett are reporting this for the Times. An FBI search warrant, you know about it. The affidavit was unsealed on Tuesday, and it shows that a criminal investigation into the 2020 elections in Fulton County, Georgia, was set off by a leading election denier in the Trump administration and relied heavily on claims about ballots that have been widely debunked. The unsealing of the affidavit in Fulton County is likely to raise more questions about the Trump administration's use of the FBI and Justice Department to revive old, largely disproved claims about the 2020 election in the state which President Trump narrowly lost. The FBI criminal investigation originated from a referral sent by Kurt Olson, not the name we focused on yesterday, but someone who was mentioned. Kurt Olson, presidentially appointed Director of Election Security and Integrity. Oh, no. Well, it doesn't seem like he has much integrity. That's what the affidavit said. Mr. Olson played a central role in Mr. Trump's attempt to overturn the 2020 election, including speaking to the president multiple times on January 6th, 2021. He has continued to push false claims about elections and was recently appointed to a key role in the Trump administration. The affidavit for the search in Georgia, where FBI agents seized ballots and other materials from an election center late last month, draws a clearer connection between the White House and the movement of Trump-supporting election activists who contend that he did not lose the 2020 presidential contest. And I remind you, therefore, of the importance. It's not just ridiculous when we watch 4 nominees to the federal bench tell Senator Blumenthal all in a row in exactly the same words that they can't or won't admit to the reality of the 2020 election. They will only say, well, for reasons unknown to me, President Biden was apparently certified and served 4 years. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. I'll continue with the New York Times write-up of the unsealing of the affidavit that established, in the minds of at least one crazy idiot federal magistrate judge, the probable cause underlying the warrant that was issued for searching and seizing ballot materials from Fulton County, Georgia. And as I was saying, this is part of the danger of watching federal judicial nominees when they're asked who won the presidential election of 2020, offering only the most carefully worded and tightrope walking of answers. And I mean, word for word, it's clear that they're only permitted by the Trump administration and the handlers there to give this particular carefully worded answer, that the answer to the question, who won the election or who won the electoral college, either way, however you put it, President Biden was certified the winner of the election and served 4 years. Well, I know he served 4 years, and that's because he was elected president. He won the election. But that's not what we're saying. Well, he was certified. Well, does that mean you think he won it? And I mean, he's not going to give this answer, but what's supposed to be behind this answer is, no, he didn't win it. He was certified anyway. Illegally. That's, I guess, their belief. And the danger here is, well, these people are nominated to the federal bench, to the federal district courts in whatever region, all 4 of these people. The federal district court, I guess, would be the place that you would go in the first instance to say something like, well, okay, a federal magistrate judge issued this search warrant for these materials at Fulton County, Georgia, but it's based on a bunch of idiotic lies that have been debunked and that federal courts have thrown out time and time again, right? There's just literally no legal basis for going forward with this, and yet this person issued the search warrant. What do we think of that? And if the person in charge in the first instance of saying whether or not that's stupid and we should throw it right the hell out of court, the way grand juries are doing with Jeanine Pirro's cases and Lindsay Halligan's cases, that's not going to be the case, because you've put on the bench people reviewing these warrants and these claims against the warrants who say things like, whoops, well, actually, we think maybe President Biden didn't win the presidential election. We never said, you can't hold it against us. We never said that he won. We just said he was certified. Now, if you ask us, do we think it was Fulton County, Georgia that was stolen that changed the result? The answer is going to be yes. Now, you may have to then appeal that at some point to the circuit courts and say, I don't know, we drew a dumb magistrate for the warrant and a liar at the district court level who testified in their confirmation hearing that they wouldn't simply state who won the damn election. So, we appeal. But, the appeals courts eventually are going to be filled with people who proved their worth at the federal district court level if you let guys like this through. So, it becomes a problem. If you get it, it's supposed to be a check against being able to lie your way into totally rewriting history and the law and the Constitution all at once, is that somewhere along the line, you're going to run into an opposition. You're going to draw a panel that's normal, bad for your case, i.e. they're going to actually apply the law, out of the three that you draw for the appeal on in any given circuit court. Or they'll rehear it en banc and you'll never win because you can't get everybody in on the conspiracy, and then it'll go to the Supreme Court, and you can't, quote unquote, can't just, manufacture a majority of people who will just rubber stamp anything this anti-constitutional idiot wants, unless, of course, you can. You only need to get 5 in that case. But anyway, you see the danger, obviously, of letting these answers slide. And yet they do. But then on the other hand, for whatever reason, several Trump-appointed judges have been key in striking down and otherwise opposing considerable and important parts of what passes for the Trump agenda, too. So there is that to consider. Anyway, back to the story about Georgia. The affidavit for the search in Georgia, where FBI agents seized ballots and other materials from an election center late last month, as you know, draws now a clearer connection between the White House and the movement of Trump-supporting election activists who contend that he did not lose the presidential contest in 2020. Brad Raffensperger, you know him, the Republican Secretary of State in Georgia and a candidate for governor, criticized the investigation. Instead of wasting time and tax dollars trying to change the past with baseless and repackaged claims, let's, look forward, right? Let's focus our efforts on building a safer, more affordable future for all hardworking Georgians, he said in a statement. That's how he tries to walk the tightrope as a Republican. Let's not look back, let's look forward. Well, unfortunately, that's been a fallback position for Democrats for a long time, too. But I think things are beginning to change in that respect. A representative for the Justice Department did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Many of the claims in the affidavit refer to long-held and consistently debunked conspiracy theories about elections in Georgia, including arguments about fraudulent and duplicate absentee ballots, election machine tabulator tapes, and missing ballot images. The claims often focus on small administrative errors or easily explainable abnormalities as evidence of fraud. One of these days we'll have to look at one of the analyses that have been offered about, point for point about the affidavit. But generally speaking, if you read only the affidavit and you have no background in any of this whatsoever, and this may be the case, about the magistrate judge they went to. They put together something that's meant to look like a persuasive case, saying, well, there were inconsistencies in the number of ballots that were cast there and they counted differently each time, or several of the ballots are imaged multiple times, or some of the ballot images are missing, or things like that. Oh, well, that is suspicious. Why would the same ballot be imaged several times? Although we've heard the explanation on occasion in this Georgia context, in particular, where that was the accusation that you scanned some of these ballots multiple times. Yeah, well, if you scan a ballot and the scanning machine comes up error, it did not scan right, the recommendation is to do what? Scan it again. So you scan it again, and this time it says, all right, I don't know what the error was, but last time it came up wrong. And, not the who was tallying the vote for. It didn't tally any vote. It just simply said the scan didn't work right. Scan it again. All right, I'll scan it again. You've been to the supermarket. You wave the barcode at the scanner, and it doesn't work. So what do? You scan it again until you get the beep, and it does work, right? Oh, okay. Terrific. Or occasionally something weird happens. This is supposed to be $2 off, but it didn't come up. So you ask the assistant to help you out if you're at the self-checkout, or, if you're in line, they scan it again. They look up what happened on the computer, and they scan it again if necessary. Well, that's the same thing as scanning it twice, right? But it sounds so sinister. Well, this ballot was scanned multiple times. Yeah, but it only got counted once, right? Yeah, but it was scanned several times. Yeah, well, that's pretty misleading, and we're not actually going to indict anybody about that. But it was. You have to admit it was scanned multiple times, don't you? Isn't that suspicious to you? It is not once you explain it. But if all you say is it was scanned multiple times, that does make it sound suspicious. A representative for the Justice Department did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Many of the claims in the affidavit refer to long-held and consistently debunked theories like, oh my gosh, it's been scanned multiple times. Yes, we've explained that before. Or focus on small administrative errors or easily explainable abnormalities as evidence of fraud. The affidavit is a total rehash of rejected and debunked claims from 5 years ago. David Becker, the executive director of the Center for Election Innovation and Research, a nonpartisan group that advises election officials, wrote in a text message. He added that there was, quote, not a single allegation of a foreign nexus or foreign interference, nodding to the fact that Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, was present for the search in Fulton County. Her appearance there had raised questions, given that her agency's role in elections extends only to foreign interference. But the New York Times reported this week that Mr. Trump had told her to investigate the 2020 vote. You go do that. You get it done. That's a quote. I don't know where he said it or why, but that's what he said. The day after the search, Ms. Gabbard arranged a call between Mr. Trump and FBI agents in which he praised and thanked them for their work on the inquiry, the Times reported. The FBI and Justice Departments had previously investigated many of the affidavit's claims and interviewed many of the same witnesses, and had concluded they were not supported by the evidence, according to people familiar with the matter who spoke on condition of anonymity, of course, to discuss details of the investigations. One claim in the affidavit comes from a Georgia resident who said there were 17,852, quote, missing ballot images in Fulton County. This claim and similar ones about ballot images, just for a second here, let's say you're a federal magistrate judge who knows nothing about any of this stuff, and someone comes to you and says, I swear to God on penalty of perjury that there were 17,852 missing ballot images. What's that about? You might say, I don't know, but I guess it would be okay to investigate. And if it turns out, as might be the case, that later on someone will say, oh yeah, that's because we had to scan some of these ballots twice. You scan it, doesn't come up right. Scan it a second time, does come up right. Count it once, but for the sake of transparency, don't throw out the first attempt at imaging so that everybody knows what happened. So if anybody says, oh, you scanned 17,000 more things, or there are 17,000 more scans than there are ballots, what happened? Well, those were bad scans, and we repeated them and got good scans. Well, then if they're bad scans, why don't you get rid of them? Because then you would accuse us of deleting ballots. Oh, explain that to the magistrate judge. They may say, oh yeah, right, no, screw you. No search warrant for you. Get the hell out of here. Did they ask that question? I don't know. Would they have accepted that answer? I don't know. Is the magistrate judge a crazy ass? I said they were for issuing this search warrant, but it may be that they were simply ignorant of the facts, and the prosecutors don't bring all the countervailing evidence that weighs against a search warrant at this stage. It's just, well, we think there's probable cause that a crime has been committed here, and we'll find more evidence if we let us look. Is it a reasonable search? And if all you do is say things like this, maybe you fool somebody. Maybe. But it's okay because there's checks and balances. Finally, when the other side gets their say and can defend themselves and things, they'll say, you're right, and throw out the evidence. If everything is considered on the up and up. So there we are. Missing ballot images do not mean ballots are missing. Gabriel Sterling, a former top election official in Georgia, noted that in 2021, I don't think I finished the previous paragraph, but you know what? I think there is at least one extra point in here. We left off before the tangent by saying one of the claims was that there was these 17,852, quote, missing ballot images. This claim and similar ones about ballot images were popular among Trump supporters immediately after the 2020 election because they sound bad. But Fulton County officials noted that at the time, the law did not require them to maintain ballot images at all. At least it passed what was it, 20 months or something like that? So, at any rate, that seems like a pretty weak claim. And as they point out, missing ballot images by themselves don't mean that there are ballots missing. Gabriel Sterling, former top election official in Georgia, noted in 2021 that election officials have all of the actual ballots that have been counted 3 times. The FBI agent who signed the affidavit, Hugh Raymond Evans, noted that if any of the alleged deficiencies in ballots were the result of intentional action, that would mean the ballots and other documents would constitute evidence of a crime. Sure, but the affidavit also cites multiple instances of witnesses insisting that any discrepancies were the result of human error and did not change the outcome. So what about that? Another section of the affidavit talks about, quote, pristine ballots that appear to not have any folds or creases in them. Then, that would be unusual. Why? Because absentee ballots must be folded and then inserted into an envelope in order to be properly returned. The presence of these pristine ballots, some in the affidavit claim, is evidence that, quote, extra ballots were introduced during the counting of absentee ballots. But there are a host of reasons that a ballot might not be folded. We'd want to hear about some of those, right? Like, for instance, some overseas and military ballots can be printed and not folded. Ballots that are damaged or cannot be read electronically sometimes need to be duplicated, reprinted, and reprocessed, and would likely not have those creases or folds. Oh, don't you think that maybe we ought to have heard something about that? Well, maybe at the trial stage, or maybe not at all, because this should never have been issued. The warrant should never have been issued for the seizure in the first place. The affidavit also reveals the critical role of the Georgia State Election Board played in starting the investigation by the federal government. The board, which is governed by a 3-member majority of right-wing election activists, how did that happen, has consistently pushed for the Justice Department to investigate Fulton County in the 2020 election. Clark D. Cunningham, a law and ethics professor at Georgia State University, said he thought the affidavit fell short of the constitutional requirement that probable cause be established before a search warrant is approved by a judge. Mere suspicion is not enough to justify a search warrant, he said. There's nothing in the affidavit that indicates probable cause that any person acted with criminal intent. It's just full of statements of, well, if it did happen that way, then that would be something. Well, then bring me some evidence that it did. Mr. Cunningham said the language of the search warrant suggested that it was merely repeating, quote, well-known speculations by well-known election conspiracy people. At a news conference on Tuesday afternoon, Rob Pitts, a Democrat and the chair of the Fulton County Board of Commissioners, described the accusations in the affidavit as recycled rumors, lies, untruths, and unproven conspiracy theories. Fulton County's 2020 elections, they've been examined, they've been re-examined, they've been audited, he said. There have been hand counts under a microscope, and in every instance, we come up clean. And any honest review going forward will also be clean. These accusations have already been debunked, but here we go again on a merry-go-round. The warrant demanded all physical ballots from the 2020 election, as well as all ballot images, tabulator tapes for Fulton County's voting machines, and copies of voter rolls from that year. Fulton County has long been the focus of election denial movements that exploded after the 2020 presidential contest, with Mr. Trump and his allies targeting Georgia after his loss there. He pressured the state's Republican Secretary of State to find him enough votes to win, and he continued to promote debunked conspiracy theories about Fulton County, which includes much of Atlanta. At least 11 lawsuits challenging the 2020 election results in Georgia have been filed, according to Fulton County records. None have proved that there was widespread fraud or malfeasance. Democrats and election officials across the country have monitored the events in Fulton County with apprehension, as some worry that Mr. Trump might direct the Justice Department to search election centers in other cities or counties as well. Elections have long been conducted by state authorities with minimal involvement from the federal government. But of course, he keeps saying we need to federalize, nationalize the elections. Repurposing these conspiracy theories as federal justification is part of a broader campaign to relitigate the past and lay the groundwork for interference in the 2026 elections, said Lauren Grow-Wargo, the chief executive of Fair Fight Action, a left-leaning voting rights group. Last week, Mr. Trump called in a podcast interview for the Republican Party to take over and nationalize elections. He later told reporters in the Oval Office that, quote, the federal government should get involved in elections, and cited a list of cities where he claimed there was voter fraud in 2020. Now, there's no evidence of widespread fraud in any of those places. Take a look at, that's always the giveaway, right, when he's lying. Take a look at Detroit, Mr. Trump said. Take a look at Pennsylvania. Take a look at Philadelphia. You go take a look at Atlanta. Look at some of the places that horrible corruption on elections, and the federal government should not allow that. The federal government should get involved. But every time they try to do it, they can't prove anything happened because nothing happened. But take more looks at it then. Take a look at the state. Take a look at the city that the state is in. Take a look at the precincts that are in the city that are in the state. You should take a look at all of them. I mean, what a pile of evidence. Take a look at Pennsylvania. Take a look at Philadelphia. Yeah. Take a look. You've taken a look. We've taken a look 11 times in Fulton County. Take another. What about that? No one's taken a 12th look. That's like literally where we are at this point. And, I mean, the big change that's happened here, what's different about the 12th lawsuit? What's different about this one? And the answer is, one, you got a search warrant. Why do you get the search warrant? The answer to all of that is, who made these 11 claims, 11 prior federal claims that there was fraud of some kind in Fulton County? And the answer is the same idiot conspiracy theorist crank that did it 10 times, 11 times. A private citizen idiot did it and lost every single time. What's the difference? Well, what if I appoint that conspiracy theory fraudster idiot to be a federal official who's in charge of election integrity? Well, then there will be a 12th accusation, and this one will land in front of a federal magistrate judge with like a big seal on it and official letterhead. I got to jump out of the way of this one. I got to defer to the federal officials asking me to do this. You don't have to. Of course, you can still require probable cause be demonstrated, but you might be biased in favor of calling the very same claim that used to be debunked stupid conspiracy theory when just some crank did it, whereas now the director of election integrity of White House, it's on letterhead and everything, same claim, but the 12th time it looks like, I don't know, I get, or maybe we should just let them investigate on, we know that there's no evidence here, go ahead, find nothing. And you worry about that because who knows whether or not the truth will prevail here. But I guess you might convince yourself, well, look what's happening with trying to indict members of Congress in the U.S. Attorney's Office, trying to indict Letitia James using the Virginia U.S. Attorney's Office. These things are coming back with no indictment. So the system works, the checks hold, is that good enough? You don't really want it to progress to that point, but I guess there's at least that check in the way, and we hope that it holds. But, it should hold earlier. There's no probable cause here. I'm sorry, we can't allow this thing to go forward. That's it. All right. Well, I think that'll do for the Georgia update at the moment. Although, there was more. Philip Bump was taking a look at this thing and basically saw it in much the same way. And I don't know whether he wrote anything up longer than his discussion of the case and the affidavit yesterday on Blue Sky. And he put it this way: a Trump attorney that aided his 2020 campaign and wrote a memo encouraging Pence to skip counting electoral votes, by the way, was given an election integrity job in the administration, which is the sort of thing that makes a magistrate judge say, I don't know, I guess I better give it some weight. And from this job, he made this referral to investigate Fulton County. That's Kurt Olson that we were talking about. And this is, I guess, Philip's reaction to Anna Bauer letting everybody know that the affidavit was unsealed and where to go read it. So anyway, he goes on to say pretty much what we learned from the Times. It rehashes debunked arguments about impropriety in order to establish a predicate for seizing election material on the basis that mistakes that occurred might have been intentional and therefore criminal. It's all transparently contrived, but just to reinforce what he's saying here, he goes on to add that the material was seized not by claiming that the election was stolen, but rather that the ballots were mishandled, which may, if it even happened, be criminal if you can prove that it was intentional. It's an end run, like saying that there's a national emergency that demands tariffs in response, say. It's an abuse of power given the obvious intent here. And that's a great point, and I think well worth pointing out. By the way, who is the magistrate judge here? We've mentioned the name before, Catherine M. Salinas, though, I don't know very much about her or how she got where she is, but I suppose we'll be hearing more about that in the days to come. I would imagine if there's anything to her connection to this case, we'll be hearing more about it. All right. Something that, here's something that Scott sent my way. Actually, he sent me a couple of things that he thought it might be worth spending some time on. And I don't know, do I have both available? Oh, yeah. Well, you know what? Let's double back on this one because he sent me a link to a site he loves to go to. He sent me like 4 or 5 articles from them. I'm always surprised why we don't include them among the panoply of publications that are surprising us regularly. I don't know. Teen Vogue, People Magazine, publications like that. GQ, I think, has made the list lately. Jalopnik deserves to be. This is like, you may recall, longtime listeners will recognize the name. It's the 4th or 5th time that their take on something has been very interesting. This goes back to the weird bridge story, the Canadian bridge to Detroit. Trump is trying to use an international bridge we didn't pay for as a hostile bargaining chip against Canada. Aaron Marquis, or Marquis, do we say Marquis? I don't know. Aaron, you can let us know whether it's Marquin or Marcos if you care, if you hear this. It took years of legal wrangling, wheeling and dealing to get the brand new Gordie Howe Bridge built. And now that we're down to the third period with a wide open net, President Donald Trump wants to take his puck and go home. Puck off. Get the puck off the ice, we might say about that guy. After years of the U.S. adamantly refusing to pay for a new bridge, it seems the U.S. is now mad that it doesn't own half of an international bridge that we didn't pay for. It shouldn't surprise anyone, but because this is Trump we're talking about, the story gets more and more ridiculous the longer you read. So strap in. Monday night, the President of the United States went on a very unpresidential rant on the social media network he owns about the Gordie Howe Bridge, which will soon serve as a second stretch between Detroit, Michigan, and Windsor, Ontario. Where was this energy of his rant when Trump was president the first time and called the bridge a priority project and a vital economic link between our two countries back in 2017? Well, I don't know. Not sure what changed, but we'll take a look after this. Hi, everybody. It's me, David, still your host for the Kagro in the Morning Show after all these years. Thank you for all your continuing support for the show. And if you're listening regularly and still thinking about getting on board as a supporter, well, the time is now. Patreon.com is the easiest way to make recurring subscription-style payments every month, all year round, to keep us going. patreon.com/KagroX brings you to our page where you can sign up with your monthly support. And hey, have you seen our clever new subscription tiers? It's easier than ever to sign up for, say, one crisp dollar bill for every information-packed 2-hour show. If you're the plan ahead type, there's even a year-long subscription program that saves you 15% on the cover price. Or it would if there was a cover price, or even a cover, for that matter. patreon.com/KAGROX. Thanks again for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Roots Radio. Let's continue with reading Jalopnik. Thanks to the people at Jalopnik for having such great insight on so many of these issues. And I don't really know. I don't know what drives Scott to read it so much, but he finds me these real gems from time to time, and it's always fun to find their perspective on these things. When we left off, though, I didn't bother rereading the lengthy Trump Truth Social post, but to remind you, this is the one in which he was very angry that the Canadians didn't want to buy our liquor product anymore because we were threatening to invade them, conquer them, and turn them into the 51st state. And he couldn't really figure out what was rational or proportional about them deciding that maybe they didn't want another bottle of Jack Daniels. Like, big whoop, but, whatever. Anyway, that's very unfair, and we're going to invade Canada as a result. And so, therefore, no bridges, and F you, and P.S., China is going to eliminate hockey in Canada. What? Right. That's the one. Now, for the more, I guess what would pass as the more coherent part of that rant, there was, all right, well, we don't want to have the bridge. But, okay, is that consistent with his statements about the bridge back in 2017? No, of course not. Why not? Because he's gotten crazier since then. And he doesn't remember from one day to the next, much less one administration to the next, how he feels about anything. Anyway, also, while it's nice that Trump, they say, is so protective of hockey, and may look, heated rivalry is changing lives, people, I really wonder where he got this China is going to end ice hockey thing. So many twisting pathways that will go unexplored in the president's mind, like so many of Trump's posts. So there are so many wrong things here that it's hard to address them all. The feds don't own half of the bridge because for over a decade we've been adamant that we won't pay for it. And that's primarily in the capitalist system how you gain ownership of things like this. You pay for it. Or, of course, you inherit it from your parents, which is an amazing part of this story as well. The private ownership of the current Ambassador Bridge. Anyway, they do discuss that a little bit. The feds don't own half the bridge because they didn't pay for it. And that is thanks in part to another questionable U.S. billionaire, the late Matty Maroon, or Moron, or however you pronounce their last name. Matty, it was Manuel yesterday, and I don't know whether his nickname is Matty, that I don't know. Anyway, Moron, I don't know, who owned the Ambassador Bridge outright since the late 1970s. I cannot believe that. Spent his twilight years doing everything he could to ensure that his 97-year-old international border crossing was the sole crossing from Canada into the U.S., while also ignoring basic maintenance and jacking up prices, competition and whatnot. Moron, which is that what we'll call him from now on, was a pain on both sides of the river. He also bought a ton of dilapidated neighborhoods along the river and let them fall into ruin just so a new bridge crossing couldn't be built there, directly contributing to Detroit's massive blight problem. The Moron family even called on Trump to put a stop to the construction of the new bridge because what's a little international trade between oligarchs, friends, as they put it here. Next section here, a bridge too far, says morons. I love that pronunciation, but it's probably maroon. Anyway, miserly ways highlighted the need for a state-owned crossing at this vital trade artery. The privately owned Ambassador Bridge is the busiest in North America. It connects us to our second largest trading partner and is responsible for $100 billion in trade annually, about $300 million a day between our two countries. This connection is vital to the auto industry. Nearly half of the goods passing through the bridge every day are automotive related. Some car parts can traverse the bridge up to 7 times before a completed vehicle is constructed. Each time, that part incurs a new tariff under Trump's trade, quote, plan. Nonetheless, we didn't pay for the new bridge. Canada did, to the tune of $6.4 billion. Unionized American labor handled the American entrance side, however, in case you thought that Trump was right about, they didn't let any Americans do anything. Nah, American labor paid for it, or did the construction and got paid for it. Well, anyway, the entrance side, which was built and is now owned by the state of Michigan. Our friends up north were even nice enough to name the bridge after someone who's a hero on both sides of the border, Detroit Red Wings legend and Canada's favorite son, Gordie Howe. Canada plans to recoup the staggering cost of building this shared piece of infrastructure via tolls. Very sensible, very normal. Trump called the bridge a priority in 2017, but now he's blaming Obama for giving Canada a waiver, you heard this one yesterday, around the Buy American Act. Parenthetically, that did not happen since the Buy American Act, as we guessed yesterday, only applied to U.S. federal agencies. Canada, it's a different country, you see. And Trump, of course, rages at Prime Minister Carney for, quote, for bringing Chinese EVs, electric vehicles, into the country. Apparently that's against the Trump agenda as well. Could Trump actually block Canada's Gordie Howe Bridge? That's the question up next. How could Trump block this bridge? Well, it's unclear, but considering how effective he's been in the past, there's a strong possibility he'll forget he even made this post by the end of the week. Still, the New York Times has an idea. They really need to stop giving him ideas. Their quote, one possible avenue would be for Mr. Trump to declare an emergency. But that's what led us to our discussion of the end of the successful run of these fake emergencies. Looks like it's in the offing, perhaps, in Congress. Under the law, Customs and Border Protection, those paragons of virtue, can temporarily close a port of entry when necessary to respond to a specific threat to human life or national interests. Mr. Trump has often invoked emergency statutes for events and circumstances that are largely considered routine to make use of the expanded authority that doing so grants him. So far, the ladies who run Michigan are not taking Trump too seriously. Stacey LaRouche, press secretary to Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, told Automotive News the bridge is happening one way or another. It's good for Michigan workers and it's good for Michigan's auto industry, said LaRouche, noting that the construction of the bridge was financed by Canada and that it was built by union construction workers from both sides of the border. This project has been a tremendous example of bipartisan and international cooperation. It's going to open one way or another, and the governor looks forward to attending the ribbon cutting. And maybe all she has to do is invite Trump and say, you cut the ribbon, and maybe he'll change his mind. I don't know. I don't want her to do that. She shouldn't have to do that. It may not work. So no reason to really explore that, but it's out there. That could really do it. That's all it may take for that guy. Anyway, good point. Financed by Canada. We're going to build a wall and make Mexico pay. And we're going to build a bridge and make Canada pay. Well, Canada did pay for the bridge. Mexico didn't pay for the wall. Now he's mad. But he didn't promise anything about a bridge, so I guess that doesn't count. Michigan's U.S. Senator Alyssa Slotkin is also unimpressed with the president's late-night bloviation, per Automotive News. She said, higher costs for Michigan businesses, less secure supply chains, and ultimately fewer jobs. With this threat, the president is punishing Michiganders for a trade war he started. And you know who really isn't chill with this whole deal? The country of Canada. Candice Lang, president and CEO of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, which technically owns the bridge, told the Detroit Free Press that blocking the Gordie Howe would be the trade equivalent of punching yourself in the face. Which, of course, if it was true, I would absolutely advocate. I'd love to see President Trump punched in the face by somebody who couldn't be prosecuted for punching Trump in the face. And I guess the only one that would be himself, right? He'd have to do it himself in order to make it work. Whether this proves real or simply threatened to keep uncertainty high, blocking or barricading bridges is a self-defeating move, Lang said in an emailed statement. The mayor of Windsor, Drew Dilkins, told the Times, this is crazy stuff. Dilkins also mentioned that Canada considered the Trump administration's involvement with the bridge when deciding to delay the grand opening last year. It looks like they should have maybe cut that big red ribbon early after all. This isn't the first time our border with our northern neighbor has been a linchpin in international right-wing politics. You may remember Canada's Freedom Convoy closed the Ambassador Bridge in 2022 while protesting COVID measures, causing an international incident that made automakers call on world leaders to get their car parts flowing again. So that's it for the Jalopnik coverage. It was interesting, and we thank you, Scott, for bringing this one to our attention. There's another that's one of your contributions to our lineup here that might make sense to add at this point from Wired magazine. Also sort of one of the unlikelier, well, I don't know what's so unlikely about it, but it's not a nationally known newspaper, daily newspaper, but they've had a breakout series of articles explaining what's going on behind the scenes in the Trump administration on a number of items, both within their normal purview and without. And in this case, maybe this is a without. Leah Feiger is the name of the author of this piece titled, ICE is expanding across the U.S. at breakneck speed. Here's where it's going next. We've been hearing in the last couple of days the focus has been on their purchase of enormous warehouses and warehouse-style buildings in many, many cities across the country. Billions of dollars spent on these things. And the word is that they're to be outfitted and used as enormous detention centers, which will make them the equivalent of concentration camps, of course. And that's been a big focus in the last couple of days, and a different type of focus for ICE. Like we were speculating, what city will they land in and terrorize Minneapolis style next? And it hasn't been clear. They haven't picked one such target, and they've sort of spread their resources around and made trouble in a number of places, but not on the same scale. But maybe more of their resources are going to this large-scale camp idea. And by the way, there's also now speculation. Well, one, I did see early on in the show something flyby on Blue Sky, which indicated that maybe the airspace closure around El Paso is lifted, even though it was supposed to be in place for 10 days, which does seem rather excessive. And then for them to lift it so quickly, if true, well, that would just leave another big question mark over what's going on there. But there was some other speculation that maybe the airspace closure had to do more with activity in and around one of these enormous detention centers that was in the area. more than anything else. And I guess this is one of the detention centers at which an outbreak of disease is causing enormous concern. I don't know what closing the airspace around it does, but, you know, it's as plausible as an invasion of Mexico in the middle of the Olympics, I suppose. So we'll keep our eyes open. But here's what Wired is reporting. ICE is expanding across the U.S. at breakneck speed. Here's where it's going next. ICE plans to lease offices throughout the U.S. as part of a secret months-long expansion campaign. Wired is publishing dozens of these locations, and it's doing so right here in front of our very eyes. Federal records obtained by Wired show that over the past several months, Immigration and Customs Enforcement and the Department of Homeland Security have carried out a secret campaign to expand ICE's physical presence across the U.S. Documents show that more than 150 leases and office expansions, not to mention the detention facilities, have or would place new facilities in nearly every state, many of them in or just outside the country's largest metropolitan areas. In many cases, these facilities, which are to be used by street-level agents and ICE attorneys, are located near elementary schools, medical offices, places of worship, and other sensitive locations. In El Paso, Texas, first on the list. This was before word of the closure reached my ears. Anyway, El Paso, Texas, for example, the agency is moving into a large campus of buildings right off of Interstate 10 near multiple local health providers and other businesses. In Irvine, California, ICE is moving into offices located next to a child care agency. In other words, by the way, these are places where you wouldn't want such activity for various and sundry reasons. It might be good material, I guess, as long as the NIMBY ethos is still pretty successful in shutting down things that we actually want to have happen. Maybe it could be used in shutting down things we don't want to have happen. It's the sort of thing you could take to a local zoning board and start complaining about. In New York, ICE is moving into Long Island offices near a passport center, convenient location to snatch up people who are trying to do things the right way. In a wealthy community near Houston, Texas, ICE appears poised to move into an office building blocks away from a preschool. The General Services Administration, the GSA, which manages federal buildings and functions as the government's internal IT department, is playing a critical role in this aggressive expansion. In numerous emails and memorandums viewed by Wired, DHS asks GSA explicitly to disregard the usual government lease procurement procedures. Oh, disregard everything. Why not? And even hide lease listings due to, quote, national security concerns. In an effort to support ICE's immigration enforcement activities across the U.S., just hide it. Just hide it from people. You don't need to be transparent in the most transparent administration in history. GSA is committed to working with all of our partner agencies, including our patriotic law enforcement partners, such as ICE. They actually believe ICE is one of those, to meet their workspace needs. Yeah, can't wait to help meet workspace needs. GSA remains focused on supporting this administration's goal of optimizing the federal footprint and providing the best workplaces for our federal agencies to meet their mission. Marianne Copenhaver, GSA's Associate Administrator for Communications, tells Wired, GSA is following all lease procurement procedures in accordance with all applicable laws and regulations, unquote. Parenthetically, I guess we have to accept the ones that we've been asked not to obey, and we're not obeying those. Oh, really? Okay. DHS, ICE's parent agency, did not reply to requests for comment. Since President Donald Trump took office in 2025, ICE has more than doubled in size. DHS claims the agency now has 22,000 officers and agents stationed around the country and is still in the process of hiring more. Not that they're qualified or anything. The agency received nearly $80 billion in funding as part of Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill Act, giving it virtually unlimited resources to combat what the administration has consistently portrayed as an invasion. With new employees comes a desperate need for office space and the possibility of deployment to new areas of operation. In September, as NPR, The Washington Post, and others reported, a number of GSA employees were added to an ICE surge team responsible for finding new office locations and expanding pre-existing offices for ICE employees. And by the way, I'm wondering how much federal office space was terminated under the dodgy boys and now replaced with either the same stock or different office stock now snapped up in many of the same areas. It might have been more efficient to perhaps transfer it from one agency to the next. More specifically, according to documents viewed by Wired, workers at the Public Buildings Service, which ironically is PBS, the department within GSA that handles government buildings and leases, were assigned to actively support ICE's physical expansion and told to find leasing spaces for ICE's enforcement and removal operations, ERO, and Office of the Principal Legal Advisor, OPLA, divisions across the country. ERO, and that's a name you see sometimes on some of those ballistic vests on people snatching people up off the street. ERO is tasked with immigration's enforcement, including the arrest, detention, and removal of immigrants, and previously operated out of only 25 field offices in the U.S. OPLA is the legal arm of ICE, which is to say nobody, and lawyers with OPLA litigate all removal cases, including those against criminal aliens, terrorists, and human rights abusers for DHS, and also just normal, regular people that they happen to kidnap. But according to ICE's website, they only do aliens and terrorists and human rights abusers. Records reviewed by Wired show that the ICE surge team has successfully found spaces for ICE across the country. In addition to expanding previously held ICE offices, it's moved or is moving ICE into new buildings or into space the government controlled under the terms of existing leases in almost every state and major U.S. city. Starting in September, GSA was pushed to bypass the Competition and Contracting Act, CICA, because who cares about competition, right? That requires open competition among bidders for federal buildings and lease procurements, because ICE requested that leases fall under the, quote, unusual or compelling urgency government statute. Yes, that's unusual. It is. Well, apparently there's an exception. You don't have to bid it out if something, unusual is going on. Well, not having bidding would be unusual. Does that count? The statute states that the procuring agency's, quote, need for the supplies or services is of such an unusual and compelling urgency that the government would be seriously injured unless the agency is permitted to limit the number of sources from which it solicits bids or proposals. Full and open competition need not be provided for. Well, if you just say it exists, in many cases, judges jump out of the way of that. And if you say that and you don't have to have a competitive bidding process, you could do something like, let's say, only lease buildings from people who donated to Trump campaigns or are members of Mar-a-Lago or something like that. Oh, no. I hope that doesn't happen. A training kickoff for PBS staff assigned to the ICE surge team the same month cited the, quote, big, beautiful bill and the aim of hiring 13,000 new ICE employees as the trigger event for the new team. These team members were told that around 250 new locations were needed for ICE employees, and this would be potentially achieved by new lease acquisitions and by locating ICE in existing federal spaces. The primary focus is securing a space. Renovations are secondary, shows documentation viewed by Wired. Employees were instructed to move as quickly as possible without getting, quote, hung up on issues like, quote, needing paint and carpet before occupancy. All right. In a memorandum dated September 10th, 2025, an OPLA representative asked GSA's Office of General Counsel to look past the usual leasing procedures with the unusual and compelling urgency justification. So a companion to or opposite to the arbitrary and capricious rule, this new phrase is unusual and compelling urgency. In accordance with Trump's executive order on immigration, in the next 3 months, OPLA will grow to more than 30,500 attorneys and 1,000 support staff, the memorandum states. OPLA has critical space needs that require the ability to identify office locations nationwide that the OPLA can readily occupy as soon as possible. And by the way, if you're leasing those things from Pervalago members, it's imperative that we sign the lease and start paying them, even if we don't actually have more than 3,500 attorneys and 1,000 support staff, even if we never get them, even if it's fraud and they're mostly empty, like certain daycare centers were alleged to be in Minneapolis area. Just pointing that out. Anyone want to film it? You'll be arrested, but go ahead. GSA's ICE surge team began visiting potential leasing locations and worked to finalize deals within days. A DHS official sent GSA an email on September 24th, 2025, asking that the agency not publicize leasing information, recognizing that this request was outside of the normal process. Due to national security concerns and recent attacks against ICE, which are largely false, by the way, publicizing new lease locations puts our officers ablaze and detainees in grave danger. The email stated, "Where's your office? Grave danger, everybody help." While many ICE locations have attracted protests, there have been no known attacks on ICE offices. And somewhere I socked away, I think, or maybe just repeated on Blue Sky. I thought I put it away. But generally speaking, people who are in a position to report on these things have said, yeah, we've been searching. It was, I think, Garrett Graff saying in his newsletter, yeah, for all of this crying about how dangerous it is and how people are doxing ICE agents and the attacks are the number of attacks are skyrocketing. The number of attacks is remaining steady at zero. So, I don't know. Basically, the underlying justification for this emergency, unusual and compelling urgency justification, not there. But doesn't matter because the leasing goes forward in a non-competitive manner. What a great day for ham sandwiches not being indicted and for Pervalago members whose fees are paying off. GSA was instructed in January of 2025 to pause most acquisitions, deliveries, and modifications, except for projects under $50,000 and those related to supporting security measures for the president's office. But on September 25th, 2025, a GSA commissioner emailed other leaders at the agency that an exception to the acquisition pause has been approved for all actions supporting the ICE hiring surge, regardless of dollar value. Remember that? At one point, Kristi Noem was saying every expenditure over, I thought it was $100,000, has to be reviewed by me personally, except, of course, if you're just giving away millions of dollars to the president's donors through fake leases for ICE buildings. Go ahead and do that. By September 29th, GSA had already awarded leasing projects, and the ERO division at ICE had sent the ICE surge team a list of requirements for specific leasing locations, including Sally Ports, a secure entryway system with interlocking doors used by military troops, prisons, and police stations, and other security measures. ICE also came to GSA with a specific request that any new location be within a 10-mile radius of an existing ERO facility. By early October, the ICE surge team was working through the government shutdown, even as other critical government work was put on hold. Days after the shutdown began, GSA was still awarding leases. On October 6, 2025, a signed internal memorandum stated the GSA should, quote, approve all new lease housing determinations associated with ICE hiring surge in light of ICE's urgent space requirements and the purported impact of delays on the agency's ability to, quote, meet critical immigration and enforcement deadlines. On October 9th, the same day that Trump announced in a cabinet meeting that the government would be making permanent cuts from Democrat programs during the shutdown, GSA received a list from OPLA with requests for office locations, including expansions and new leases in 41 cities around the country. In a memorandum dated October 29th, 2025, a representative from Homeland Security Investigations, one of the two major departments within ICE, along with ERO, and tasked with a wide range of investigative work in cases ranging from human trafficking to art theft. I don't know if that's Homeland Security, but okay. Asked GSA's Office of General Counsel to engage in a nationwide lease acquisition on behalf of DHS using the unusual and compelling urgency justification in accordance with Trump's executive immigration order. If HSI cannot effectively obtain office space in a timely manner, HSI will be adversely impacted. Oh no, not adversely. In accomplishing its mission, a mission that is inextricably tied to the administration's priority in protecting the American people against invasion, the memorandum states. In early November, according to documents viewed by Wired, 19 projects had been awarded in cities around the U.S., including Nashville, Dallas, Sacramento, Tampa, and others. Multiple projects were days away from being awarded in Miami, Pittsburgh, and New Orleans, among others. An emergency request for short-term space had been made in 8 cities, including Atlanta, Baltimore, Boston, and Newark, New Jersey. In documents viewed by Wired, ICE has repeatedly outlined its expansions into cities around the U.S., the September memorandum citing unusual and compelling urgency for office expansion states that OPLA will be expanding its legal operations into Birmingham, Fort Lauderdale, Fort Myers, Jacksonville, and Tampa, Des Moines, Boise, Louisville, Baton Rouge, Grand Rapids, St. Louis, Raleigh, Long Island, New York, Columbus, Ohio, Oklahoma City, Pittsburgh, Charleston, and Columbia, South Carolina, Nashville, Richmond, Spokane, Coeur d'Alene, Milwaukee. You get the picture? The memorandum also states that the existing offices are at maximum capacity. Ooh, we're late. We're at maximum capacity. And will require additional space to accommodate new employees hired? Maybe. At the time, the memo states that OPLA has selected almost 1,000 attorneys to hire. I don't know whether any of them are actually attorneys or whether any of them are really real. Months after the surge began, ICE's expansion to American cities is well underway, according to documentation viewed by Wired. The table below gives the detailed listing of planned ICE lease locations as of January and includes current ICE offices that are set to expand and new spaces the agency is poised to occupy. It does not include more than 100 planned ICE locations across many states, including California, New York, and New Jersey, where Wired has not viewed every specific address. Wired reached out to the owners of these private properties at which ICE is planning to lease space or to agents and managers associated with those properties. No response so far to requests for inquiries or declined comments. You can take a look at the chart if you take a look at the Wired article. We'll see if we can't arrange for some gift subscriptions to see those things. But there's much more detail. But just generally speaking, I would say the warning I'm going to glean from this, though it's not explicitly stated by Wired at any stage, I guess in light of the Minneapolis daycare freakout, look out for unoccupied, empty, or ghost offices just used as payoffs to supporters.
You've been listening to Kagro in the morning.
Or maybe even the Trump family itself. We don't know. We'll have to keep an eye on things. And in that vein, guess what's next? The West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Justice Putnam, where he'll be collecting his own view of the important stories of the day from around the country and around the world. And it comes up next right here on Netroots Radio. We'll see you. We'll go away and come back tomorrow.